Hello there. Good. It's night here in Albuquerque. It is now 11:14. I would be recording this earlier, but I got off work an hour late, and it was a stressful last hour. I have the easiest job in the store. Sometimes in terms of focus and frustration, it's not quite so easy. But I took a few hours to eat supper, to relax, to drink some Coke, and now I'm going to make a video. I am making a video. This, of course, is Christianity on the bottom shelf. I'm trying to put the Christian religion on the bottom shelf, the cookies on the bottom shelf, so everyone can reach them. And I want to begin by reading the first verse of the book of Mark. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Mark is an abrupt writer, and those who are able to say such things with authority because they've studied the subject have said that Mark was writing for the Romans, who were straightforward people. I don't know the Roman character, but he's certainly straightforward. He goes right into the middle of it. The second verse, well, he's quoting Isaiah, but he doesn't go into the birth of Jesus. He doesn't go into all the things that Matthew and Luke do. He just drops you right into the middle of Jesus' ministry. Not right in the middle, but hopefully you get my point. The thing is that I want to talk about, though, is the name of Jesus. What does Mark say here in the Legacy Standard Bible? Jesus Christ. Is that how Jesus referred to himself? Is that how his disciples referred to him? Did they say Jesus Christ? Well, no, they didn't speak English. English didn't exist then. The beginnings of English didn't exist then. There were, in Northern Europe, various Germanic tribes speaking various Germanic languages, which eventually, over the next few centuries, would become Anglo-Saxon, which would become Old English, which would become Middle English, which would become Modern English, and we're speaking the current iteration of Modern English. But we have centuries, millennia of space between English and what those tribes are speaking in Mark's day. So nobody called him Jesus Christ in those days. What did they call him? Well, in the Greek, and I'm going to mispronounce this, I guarantee it. If you know Koine Greek, please forgive the botched pronunciation. But here in the Greek of the New Testament, it would be Iesus Christos. And when you see it written out, you can, in English letters, if you see it in Greek letters, it'll be chicken scratch. But when you see it written in English letters, you can see where from Iesus Christos we get Jesus Christ. So is that how his disciples referred to him? Is that how they addressed him? It's possible. Greek was the international language in that day, as English is the international language in ours. An airline pilot, whether he's flying to France or Portugal or the United States, speaks at least enough English to communicate with the tower, with air traffic control, and take off, land, and fly. It's the international language. And there are people who come from non-English speaking countries who speak better English than Americans. And if you've been watching my videos, you know I can really hack the language apart. But when appropriate, I speak it properly. Most Americans can't. So maybe, at least some of the time, people would refer to Jesus as Jesus Christos. But that is not his original name. Now here I can't claim to be as authoritative, not that I'm authoritative on the Greek, believe me. But my understanding is that Jesus Christos is the translation of, and I'm really going to mangle this pronunciation, Yeshua HaMashiach. Jesus Christ, Jesus Christos, Yeshua HaMashiach. And they all mean Jesus the Anointed One, Jesus the Messiah meaning the Anointed One. And maybe another video will be a good one to make, going into who anointed Jesus? What does this anointing mean? How is he anointed? All that sort of thing. Again, keeping it short as I try to do, as I'm trying to do here. So, why does our Bible then not have the beginning of the Gospel of Yeshua HaMashiach? Well, do we know that Jesus spoke Hebrew? I think he did. In fact, he had to have. Let me rephrase that. Because on at least one occasion he went into the synagogue, took the scroll of Isaiah and read it, and although the everyday language of that part of the world was Aramaic, which is related to Hebrew, the scrolls have always been in Hebrew, with the caveat that parts of Daniel and a few bits and pieces of a few other books are originally in Aramaic, and so that's how they would read it from the scroll. But Isaiah is in Hebrew. Jesus, therefore, would have read Hebrew. In fact, in that part of the world, you were probably a polyglot regardless of who you were. You would speak Aramaic as your daily language. You probably knew a few bits and pieces at least of Hebrew. You probably spoke at least passable Greek. And to deal with the Romans, you probably had at least some basic Latin. And who knows what other languages you might have spoken. I don't know what all languages even existed then, although I know English didn't. So, why doesn't it say here the Gospel of Yeshua HaMashiach? Because we're not reading it in Hebrew, we're reading it in English. There are people, I've met a few online, who insist on calling Jesus Yahoshua when he was probably Yeshua. So right off the bat, they're being a little pompous, aren't they? The thing is, what's my name? Is it Robert or Roberto? Are we speaking English or Spanish? That makes the difference. Is my last name McKay or Machai? Are we speaking English or Scottish Gaelic? And they call it Gaelic over there. To us in the States, Gaelic means having to do with France. In Korean, Jesus is Yesu. In Spanish, it's Jesus. In Greek, it's Iesus. In Hebrew, it's Yeshua. Well, which language are we speaking here? Are we speaking Hebrew? No. Are we speaking Korean? No. Are we speaking, name a language. Are we speaking that language? No. We're speaking English. We're reading in English. There's a lady at work named Maria. And one day, I can't remember the context, but I had to get her attention, so I said Maria. And she said, my name is Maria, not Maria. I said, but I was speaking English. In Spanish, your name is Maria. In English, it's Maria. And she couldn't argue with that because it's true. A name changes from language to language. Does anybody insist that we call John Mark whatever his name would be in Greek or Latin? How many of these people who insist on calling Jesus Yahoshua say Isaiah the Hebrew way? How many of them say Peter the Greek way? How many of them, for that matter, say Elohim, or let me try to say it in Hebrew. Again, botched pronunciation, my apologies. How many speak of God as Elohim and speak and use his personal name, Yahweh? They don't. It's only that one name where all of a sudden they think they have to go to Pseudo-Hebrew. We don't need to do that. As I've said, we're speaking English. Now, it may be you also speak Spanish or Greek or Korean or Romanian or, and that's fine. Wonderful. I wish more Americans had at least some smattering of another language. They might learn to appreciate their own better. Because just as Spanish can do things English can't, English can do things Spanish can't. But until you see the two side by side, you don't necessarily realize these things. And I don't claim to be fluent in Spanish. I'm not. Hablo un poco español, pero solamente un poco. See, I'm already running out of Spanish. I was trying to say I can carry on a basic, brief conversation in Spanish, but I don't have that much Spanish. Tengo un buen acento y buena pronunciación, pero vocabulario y gramática no tengo. And if you don't understand that, that's fine. I'm simply demonstrating my lack of fluency in Spanish. I speak English. I speak Texas English, sure. You know, you have a little pond out in the pasture for the stock to drink of. That's a surface tank to me. You see this critter crossing the road. He's got a shell on him. That's an armadillo. Not an armadillo, an armadillo. The name of the town of Amarillo is the Spanish word for yellow. And then you can throw the yellow armadillo through the window. And different varieties of Southern will have different pronunciations of some things. There are even different varieties of Texan. But my point is, that is the language I speak. I don't speak Greek. I don't speak Aramaic. I don't speak Hebrew. Therefore, there is no need to try or to pretend to speak Aramaic or Greek or Hebrew. So if one of these people comes to you online or in person, or you see it on TV or whatever, and he makes it clear either by plain statement or by implication that he thinks you have to call Jesus by his alleged Hebrew name, you can very politely say, "Thank you, but no, I don't speak Hebrew. I speak English." His name in English is Jesus. And you might even ask, does God only speak Hebrew? Does God only know his name? Does Jesus only know his name if you say it in Hebrew? Nobody's going to say that God only knows Hebrew. Nobody's going to say that Jesus won't know who you mean if you speak a different language. This is the God who knows all things, who created all things, who confused the languages and knows every word of every language that has ever existed. And we're going to say you have to say his name a certain way or he won't know who you're talking to? I hope that is not the position of the people I have in mind. However, their insistence on this sure makes it seem like that's their position. Whatever our position, whether we address Jesus, whether we speak to God in English or Norwegian or Welsh or the received pronunciation of English, and I'm sure I botched that too. Or Australian, what they speak in Australia, another botched accent surely. Or maybe you speak to him in Korean. And usually I do good Korean accent in English, but only broken English. That's not even working. When I talk to my wife, I do it without even thinking because she's not fluent in English. Whatever language you speak to God in, let's put it that way, He understands you. If you can't speak audibly, He understands you. If the only language you know is sign language, He understands you. If you are paralyzed from the neck down, you can't speak, you can't move your hands, you cannot communicate in any way except maybe by blinking your eyes. God understands the thoughts of your mind and the intentions of your heart. And it doesn't have to be in this or that particular language. So please don't put your effort and your time and your concern into which language you use. Just worship God in your language because He understands that language.